Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Roy Evans, strong leg, it's over him. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep to the end zone. Up the middle, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50,
And the winner is...
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
Welcome back to the official Heisman Trophy podcast as we say goodbye to September and say hello to October. You know, each year's Heisman race is a story unto itself with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we're at the end of the beginning, and we're just about to start the middle, which of course is getting to the good part. Buckle up because we're about to get into the heat of conference play, some great matchups, rivalries, and when this month comes to a close and the dust settles, we might see the races winnowed down a bit as we head into the final chapter. This looks to be one of the more exciting Heisman races in recent memory. History could be made in any number of ways, and we're really excited to talk about it and bring on some great guests to put it all into context. We've got a fantastic podcast for you today. Later on in our show, we're going to have Stewart Mandel of theathletic.com, who's going to talk about the Athletic's latest Heisman poll. 1998 Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Williams of the University of Texas will be here to share his thoughts on the 119th edition of the Red River Showdown. He's also going to take us on a deep dive into his 1998 Heisman winning season and give us an update on what he's been up to lately. You won't want to miss that one. And we're going to lead off our show like we always do with an interview with one of the best players in the country. We're talking about Washington State junior quarterback Cameron Ward. This young man has been on quite a journey from a small town in southeast Texas to the FCS and now to the FBS. So here's your chance to learn more about this rather unexpected Heisman candidate. But before we get to all of that, let's do like we always do and round up the latest in the Heisman world.
It's the Heisman Roundup.
Week 5. Week 5 of the college football season saw some incredible performances, and we're going to jump right into it with some of the most impressive efforts, starting with 2022 Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams over at USC. Williams, in his quest to become just the second two-time Heisman winner, threw for 403 yards and a career-high-tying 6 touchdown passes to lead USC to a 48-41 win at Colorado. He now has a national best 21 touchdown passes and also leads the country in yards per attempt and quarterback rating. To say he's playing at a high level in his bid to win a second trophy is an understatement.
Watch Williams. He may run this one. Here's Williams pumping, looking, taking his time all day to throw it. Buys more time. Side on throw. And it's caught. Washington across the field. Hits the sideline. Touchdown USC. 71 yards.
At 5-0, Texas is off to its best start since 2009 when it won its first 13 games en route to a BCS title appearance, and quarterback Quinn Ewers is a huge reason why. In Saturday's 40-14 win over previously unbeaten Kansas, Ewers passed for 325 yards and a score, and also found the end zone twice on the ground, including this 30-yard run that opened the game scoring.
Ewers takes off running. Ewers! He will score! Touchdown! 30 yards.
Speaking of 5-0, how about Kentucky? The Wildcats broke through into the top 25 after beating Florida 33-14 behind a monster game by running back Ray Davis. The senior ran for a career-high 280 yards and 4 scores and also caught a 9-yard touchdown pass. All 4 of Davis's TD runs came in the first half, including this 75-yard burst.
And then Ray Davis! All day Ray! Look at him go! Man, oh man, is Davis doing it up! 75-yard touchdown for sweet baby Ray!
Top-ranked Georgia had its hands full late at Jordan-Hare Stadium against a fired-up Auburn squad. Cue tight end Brock Bowers. The talented junior caught 8 passes for 157 yards, all but 9 of them in the second half, and his 40-yard touchdown catch with under 3 minutes left was the winning score on the 27-20 win. It was also Bowers' second straight 100-yard game. Play the highlight of the game winner.
Beck
Plenty of time. Down the middle. Guess who? Brock Bowers. Bowers heading to the end zone. Touchdown, Georgia.
Finally, we have to give a shout out to LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, who left everything on the field in a 55-49 loss at Ole Miss. The senior threw for 414 yards on 27 of 36 passing with 4 touchdowns, while rushing for another 99 yards and one more score. He rallied the Tigers back from a 28-14 deficit, and his final TD pass put LSU ahead 49-40 before the Rebels scored twice late.
He was terrific. I mean, he threw some incredible passes. You know, he dropped some passes in there that were just terrific.
And that's this week's list of top performers in the Heisman world. If you got any questions, comments, feedback, hit us up at pod@heisman.com. That's pod@heisman.com. Hey, college football fans, tickets to the 2023 Heisman Trophy Dinner Gala are now on sale. The event takes place in New York City on Sunday, December 10th, the day after the Heisman Trophy ceremony. The guest of honor for the gala is the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner, as well as the 50th anniversary winner John Cappelletti, the 25th anniversary winner Ricky Williams, and the 10th anniversary winner Jameis Winston. Plus, we'll also be honoring the 2023 Heisman Humanitarian Award winner. Just go to Heisman.com to purchase tickets and witness Heisman history. Our first guest this week on the official Heisman Trophy podcast is one of the surprise players in the country. He started out in West Columbia, Texas, not far outside of Houston. He played in a wing T offense in high school and so was not highly recruited as a quarterback. And so he ended up at the University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas. After 2 stellar seasons, including being named the Jerry Rice Award winner as a freshman and the Southland Conference Offensive Player of the Year as a sophomore, a year in which he threw for over 4,600 yards and 47 touchdowns, he entered the transfer portal and ended up at Washington State. He made an instant impact last year, throwing for over 3,200 yards and 23 touchdowns. Back for another year in the Palouse, he's off to a great start through 4 games with 1,389 yards passing, completing 75% of his passes with 13 touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns as well. Most importantly, his team is 4-0, coming off a big win over a ranked Oregon State squad and getting ready to play UCLA in the Rose Bowl this coming Saturday. Of course, we're talking about Cameron Ward, quarterback for Washington State. Thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
Congratulations on your big win over Oregon State. Your team is ranked 16th in the AP poll, and it looks like you made a really big jump from last year. You're off to a great start this season. To what do you attribute this great improvement?
Really to all the hard work that we had put in the offseason, from myself, from the whole offense as a whole, from the defense. I feel like each and every person on the team has, just made tremendous improvements, especially with the coaching changes that we had as DC and OC. I feel like those two guys, Coach Schmidt and Coach Buck, they came in and really implemented what they wanted us to do scheme-wise. So it's just right now, it's just really all of us working together and, just trying to go win each and every Saturday.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your journey. You started out at Columbia High in, is it Columbia High in West Columbia, Texas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not too far from Houston. I understand you played in a wing T offense in high school. Obviously, you didn't get too much of a chance to develop in that scheme, your skills as a passer. But what things did you take away from that offense?
The biggest thing I took away from that offense is 3-step and 5-step drops. That's something that, even in Little League, we were throwing the ball in my Little League. So once I got to junior high school, it was straight power eye, wing T, a lot of misdirection. The biggest thing that I took from that is just 3-step and 5-step drops.
Right. What about did you have to run the ball more in that offense too?
Not really. I was able to have 3 good running backs at the time, but, they did a lot of the heavy lifting. We would throw it a couple times a game, but, I really didn't run the ball that much at that time.
Yeah. So you went to FCS Incarnate Word and won the starting job as a freshman, and you had more attempts in 6 games in your first season than you did your entire senior season in high school. What was the key to your development as a passer, between that senior year going into your freshman year?
Really just trusting the process. And it was hard. When I first got to UIW, me transitioned from a wing T to an air raid offense, that playbook, it wasn't easy for me to learn. There's a lot of days where I would just have to sit in the room and just really going through the base plays before we even get to all the whether like the deep choice routes, all the the deep posts with the over routes. It was really more of me just focusing on how to read four verts, wide cross, all of that. So I really had to go with the basics for a long time before I got the hang of it.
Now, you guys played in the spring, right, because of COVID?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Did that help too because you had a little bit more time to sort of absorb the offense?
That helped for sure. And that's why I believe COVID, it wasn't good, obviously, for the country, but in my situation, it was good for me because it allowed me to, compete for the starting job. Because if we would have played that fall season, I for sure wouldn't have been the starter at UIW at that time. So, it gave me a little bit of an edge on the other quarterbacks because it allowed me, learn the playbook more, learn how to set protections more. So, it for sure helped me get me ready for that spring season. When it was time to play football, I just let it all loose.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a silver lining there. So by your sophomore season, you're just starting to put up dominant numbers for your team. You got, 4,600 yards passing, 47 touchdown passes. Was it this the point where you really got a sense that you could move up to the next level, to the FBS level?
For sure. Especially after coming off, a good freshman season like I had. I was able to win the Jerry Rice Award there as best FCS freshman player of the year. So I felt like at the time it was ready for me to move on my journey. Because at the end of the day, where I want to give football, a lot of scouts, a lot of people don't really look at FCS tape. So I feel like it was right timing, and when I needed to make that decision, everything worked out for the better.
The transfer portal has seen a few FCS players do pretty well in the FBS. What's the main difference between the two levels?
The biggest difference is just the O-line and D-line, and it's really the defensive ends. The defensive ends, they're way more athletic up here. They have better pass rush moves. The biggest thing that I've learned is that every defensive end has a third down move. Mm-hmm. So the back end, the secondary, the running backs, all that is the same at the FCS. I actually believe FCS has better skill positions than FBS, in my opinion. Just being able to play with some of the guys that I did that time at UIW, they can for sure start up here at the Power 5 level. So, at the end of the day, it's all just becomes to, whether at the end of the day, it just comes down to, football, just 11 on 11 got to be better than the man you are in front of you.
Maybe between you and Shedeur Sanders, you guys can be kind of the Pied Pipers for the FCS skill guys, What was it that drew you to Washington State?
Really pulled me into place. So my head coach at the time, UIW, he ended up being the offensive coordinator here. So that was a big influence on me coming up here. But as soon as I stepped on Pullman, I'm from a small town. It has small town vibes. So, it wasn't really anything too flashy about Pullman, and just it was somewhere where I can focus on football and focus on becoming a better man. And that's why I feel like I've grown these past 2 years being here. I'm just excited to be here, and I've been blessed.
Yeah. I hear a big reason that you chose Pullman was because it had a Dairy Queen, and you're quite the Dairy Queen fan.
No, if you got a Dairy Queen in a small town, you're living right. I'll tell you that right now.
Are you also like a Whataburger fan in Texas?
Yes, sir, I am. A lot of my teammates, especially RJ, he says In-N-Out burgers are better. I'll agree on that. It's just because he doesn't get the right stuff from Whataburger. You don't get the burger if you go to Whataburger. You got to get, the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich, sub honey butter on there. Get the honey butter chicken biscuit. You got to get the off-script stuff. Right. You can't get the first stuff that you see.
Well, you'll be in L.A. next week, and some people consider L.A. the hamburger capital of the world. Lots of great hamburger joints there, so you can try In-N-Out at a bunch of other places potentially. I noticed in this game against Oregon State, Josh Kelly, well, you guys have a great connection. And this, he made some amazing catches in that game, and of course, you put the ball in just perfect places for him to catch it. Was this something was happening in the off season, or is this suddenly developing in this one game?
It's been happening since January, since he first got here. The things that not only that he did Saturday, what Kyle Williams did, that's probably not even the most craziest thing that I've seen them do. I mean, the things that they did when they first got here in the spring, in the summer, even in fall camp, the catches that they've made, I just got to put the ball in play. I just got to do my job. And so, there'll for sure be a lot more plays for him and Kyle out there just like that. But those two guys, they're real they're real lenient with me. They were very patient with me first getting here. We had to get a lot of timing done. But the way they run routes, the way they can win versus man, it's good for me to have receivers like that who I trust just like that to just go put the ball in play.
You certainly look really confident out there playing. Do you feel more confident? Like, it's almost like, you had your development has always been like, you have like the one season of adjustment and then your next season you blow up. And then, that happened at UIW. Seems to happen at Washington State. You had a pretty good year last year, but now you're off to a great start. Is it just something where the game has slowed down a bit for you at this level?
I wouldn't even say it slowed down because, in my opinion, it's the same speed as the FCS level was. But I'll probably say the biggest thing from last season, this season, is that we just have a more mature team, in my opinion. From myself, I've grown so much as a player in the film room, on the field. The people that I have around me in the offensive line, the trenches, they've grown so much a year ago. The defensive line, who's the backbone of defense, what they've done, RJ and BJ, what they've done for this program. So I just think we're just a different group this year. We're all playing together as one.
I saw some highlights of you playing basketball in high school. You seem to be quite the shooter. I guess basketball was your first love?
Yes, sir. Basketball was my first love. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan. My room at home, I have a signed Kobe by jersey, signed basketball by him. I have a big Kobe mural on my wall. So I was a big Kobe Bryant fan coming up. I loved playing baseball when I was younger. I didn't get to do that as I got to high school because I did so much travel AAU basketball. Yeah. But I'm a big basketball fan. But football slowly took over.
Who's your team that you follow the most in basketball?
The Lakers. Lakers for sure.
Lakers. Always a Lakers fan, huh? Mm-hmm. What do you enjoy the most about playing college football?
Playing in front of 40,000 people, probably. Friday Night Lights in Texas, especially in small town, it can get loud there. When I transitioned to my FCS, my first 2 years in college, we're only playing in front of, especially at home, maybe 5,000 people max. So I never really got to play in front of a packed stadium like that. In high school, I was able to take visits. I went to Texas A&M, see how loud their stadium got, go to U of H, see how loud their stadium got. So it's always been a dream of mine to play in front of packed stadiums. I'm excited to be living that out right now. So that's for sure probably the most forward things I'll be looking to each and every week, playing in front of a lot of people.
What's been your most memorable college football moment, and what game this year or what setting this year are you looking the most forward to?
My most memorable game was against Lamar. My freshman year at UIW is my second start. I can't remember how many yards I had, but it was just one throw. I was rolling out to the right on like the 30-yard line, threw it all the way back across my body to my running back for a touchdown on the rope. So that's probably one of my most memorable plays. As far as this year, I'd probably say Josh Kelly played last week versus Oregon State, where I just threw a stop route for 10 yards. He did the rest, breaking 3 tackles, racing to the end zone. So he for sure got the crowd hyped up on that one. But that's probably my best play so far this year.
Are you looking forward to playing in the Rose Bowl?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm real looking forward to playing to that. I have some family members coming down from Texas. I haven't seen them in a while, so it'd be good to see them after the game. But it's a lot of historic tradition at the Rose Bowl, and we get to play on some nice grass, and so I'm excited for that opportunity. There's
been a long line of great Washington State quarterbacks. How much do you know about that great lineage up there in the Palouse?
I think I know enough. From Leaf, Bledsoe, Gardner. I got a chance to talk to Luke Falk, Brink. The quarterback tree here, it's deep for sure. But at the end of my time here, I'm just trying to put myself up there with those guys.
Say you were a Heisman Trophy voter and you're looking to vote for a quarterback and you want to, kind of differentiate or look for a quarterback and to see what differentiates that quarterback from other quarterbacks besides yards and touchdowns. What are the things you would look for to sort of, find a quarterback that stands out?
I'd probably say the biggest thing is that you got to watch the film. A lot of media outsources, they like to go off just statistics. But I believe if you're going to take a chance on someone, you have to watch the film, see how they can get through hard times, whether it's after a fumble, interception, whether their defense isn't doing good one game. I feel like you have to look at a person like that and how he responds. And then also just the plays that they're making, whether it's with their arm, outside the pocket, inside the pocket, with their feet. So I think a lot of goes into it. But, I'm for sure, if I'm grateful for the opportunity, I'm just trying to put everything I can, showcase my skills on tape.
Yeah, I noticed that you're really comfortable in the pocket, moving around, buying time. There's a couple plays against Oregon State where you had a ton of time because you had created that time and really moved around really well. What are some of the quarterbacks who you think that you compare favorably to?
Personally, I don't really compare myself to anybody, but I do like watching a lot of quarterbacks, especially in the NFL. I love watching Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tua right now, who's balling. Joe Burrow, I love watching him now, especially when he was at LSU at the time. USC right now, Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, he's still balling out right now. He's playing good football. Mike Penix at Washington, he's playing good football. So, it's a lot of good quarterbacks so you can turn on TV, you see a show each and every day. It's
a long way to go, but if you were to find yourself in New York City as a Heisman Trophy finalist, what would that mean to you?
It'd be a blessing for sure, because not a lot of kids from where I'm from, especially a small town, will get an opportunity like that, especially in the journey that I've had. So, it's definitely be a stepping stone on my journey where I want to go playing football. But it'll only be the beginning for me. I'm never satisfied. I love working. I like being coachable. So, it'll for sure be a blessing. Did you have any personal goals before the season started? Personal goals this year is really be Pac-12 championship. Utah, they're the reigning Pac-12 championships. They're back-to-back. They have the title. So, if we can get an opportunity to play those guys, I'm sure we'll take advantage of it. But personally, I'm just trying to win a Pac-12 championship. Tell you what, that game against Oregon State was a great first step. Cam Ward, thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast. We appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you and your team the best of luck. Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Hi, this is Billy Sims, 1978 Heisman Trophy winner. You are listening to the official Heisman Trophy podcast. Boomer!
Take an even deeper dive into Heisman lore by going to Heisman.com, home to all things Heisman, including news, bios, and the latest on all the winners, plus updates on the Heisman Trophy Trust and its charitable mission. It's the A to Z for everything Heisman, from Alan Amici to Danny Werfel. We really need a Heisman winner whose name begins with Z. With the big game between Oklahoma and Texas coming up this Saturday, we thought it would be appropriate to not only have Billy Sims given a little boomer, as you just heard, but also talking to one of the great Texas football players of all time, 1998 Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Williams. The Texas Tornado produced one of the finest seasons in college football history in 1998, rushing for 2,124 yards and 27 touchdowns. He broke Tony Dorsett's 22-year-old NCAA career rushing record, which has since been broken, but nevertheless, few running backs have left their mark on the sport the way Ricky Williams did. And we caught up with him recently. He was just hanging out on his back porch, his office as he calls it, birds chirping in the background, and we hope you enjoy this interview as much as we did. Ricky Williams, 1998 Heisman winner, thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first off, we got the Red River Showdown coming up this Saturday between your alma mater, the number 3 Texas Longhorns, and the number 12 Oklahoma Sooners. What do you think about the Longhorns this year and this big matchup that's coming up with the rival up north?
Well, it's been a really long time since we've been ranked higher than they have going into this game, and so I think that's a sign of the times. And I think this is probably the most excited I've been about a Texas OU game in over 10 years. So it's we've been knocking on the door trying to get over the hump. People say, "Is Texas back? Is Texas back?" At least at this point in the season, it seems like. Yes, we are back.
You actually went 2-1-1 against the Sooners in your career, including a 34-3 romp as a senior. Which of those games was the most memorable for you?
Memorable, not in a positive way, was the first one. Coming from California, I heard about the Texas OU game, but I was like, "What's the big deal?" And then when we got on the field, we played Notre Dame earlier that year, so I saw big guys, but seeing big, fast guys like the Sooners recruit, and then the way they played, I think I had 14 carries for 7 yards. So not a positive memory. It was kind of like a non-game for me. It's bad. But we escaped with the tie, so at least there wasn't a loss. The next year, same thing, right? It was a tie, but it was the first year of overtime in college football. And so we played out of the tie and they beat us. And then I think the most memorable and a positive way was my junior year, because we were 4-7 my junior year, which was obviously way below Texas standards.
Right.
But we beat the Sooners, and I had over 200 yards that game. So it was a positive memory, was that my junior year.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning for a minute. Your early athletic career was very active and varied, kind of like you, just a kind of well-rounded, into liking to dabble in all kinds of things. You played football, baseball, you ran track, competed in wrestling and taekwondo. What drew you to compete in so many of these sports? Was it just the competition, or was it just the interest in seeing what these things were like?
I'd say neither. It was just the necessity to be doing something that I can get better at every day. That was interesting, because school, you can make the argument you can get better at school every day, but it wasn't very interesting to me. But going out and being able to compete, even when I started to wrestle, because I didn't know anything about wrestling, and the amount of growth and change I got literally on a daily basis was, it was so fulfilling, just that feeling of getting better at something.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I live for.
So you kind of need to keep moving, improving, can't stay stagnant, right?
Exactly. It's probably some proving, but I have this feeling like, we only have a certain amount of breaths. We only have a certain amount of days on the planet. And I want to use it's football training. A football coach says we only got 3 days to prepare for this team. We have to maximize every minute so that we are in the best situation to be victorious. Yeah. I just have that mindset where I only have so many hours on this earth, and I want to use as much as I can to improve, to get better.
Which of those sports or activities was your passion, would you say? There's your number one passion?
Whichever season it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Because whatever, even though I played more football when I was wrestling, I can't say I was more passionate about football than I was about wrestling. I guess for me, if I'm going to spend time doing something, I'm going to put all of me in it. And so I think I have this natural connection between being interested in something and being passionate about it.
Right. And then all those things kind of ended up being a little bit complementary, right? With wrestling, you learned about leverage and baseball, just the general skill, ball skills and hand-eye coordination, right?
Oh, baseball, what I learned most about baseball is how to fail. And, people will say that, that Hall of Fame hitter, fails 70% of the time. We say it, but the reality when you're playing the game and you're experiencing that 70% of the time failure, and that's when you're doing well, but when you're in a slump, 80% of the time failure. I think I hit 290, 211 one year. So, it taught me how to handle failure. And when I say failure, I think of it a couple of ways. One is anything that we become successful at, we had to have little failures in the beginning, right? And what the passion is what helps us survive those failures and keep pushing on. But when the passion goes and there's just failure, it's not much fun. And that's what happened to me with baseball, because I couldn't get enough at bats to get as good as I really wanted to be, because I was only doing it part-time, and then I would run back to Texas.
Yeah.
And so when Coach Ditka, when he drafted me and he said, you got to pick one, it was easy. It was easy to choose football.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it's sort of like golf, right? If you don't keep playing, you're just not going to get better. You just have to keep doing it. Otherwise, what's the point? Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you keep doing it, it's like I said earlier, it's fun to watch, the strokes come down.
Yeah. So by the end of your senior season at Patrick Henry, you're one of the most coveted running backs in the country. Tell me about your recruiting process. There's all kinds of stories about where you might have gone if this had happened, but kind of give me the true lowdown about, who really wanted you, where you almost went, where you could have gone, and why you ended up at Texas.
Yeah, because I think I was like the third running back, like 3 or 4 in the nation. Pretty much could have gone. It's funny saying that, looking back to high school, but I pretty much could have gone anywhere. Notre Dame really wanted me. And when I say really wanted me, places where I could see myself fitting in their system, So Notre Dame really wanted me and I wanted them. University of Colorado really wanted me and I liked them. USC, Texas, and then San Diego State. And mainly San Diego State because Marshall Faulk had just left,
Yeah.
Wow. And I guess so watching him going through high school, watching him play, it was like, wow.
Sure.
So yeah, those were the five. And then I took a trip to Berkeley. But the school I really wanted to go to was Stanford.
Yeah.
1, because they're Stanford, and 2, because at the time that the recruiting process started, the head coach was a guy by the name of Bill Walsh. And so, I saw myself as a fullback in that Stanford West Coast offense.
Right.
And then maybe moving to tailback later in my career. But that was my vision. Walsh left, and another offensive genius came on. Coach John Mackovic.
Yeah,
man, his ability to scheme the run game and the passing game. Oh, it was amazing. So. I wanted to go to a team where the offensive mind behind the team would find creative ways to utilize my talents.
Yeah.
Whether I was playing fullback or tailback. And really it came down to which coach could convince me, that I would get a chance to play. And Mackovic, I believed him when he said what he said.
And of course you came in, you actually started out at fullback with Texas, right?
Yeah. My sophomore and freshman year, I played fullback.
And a lot of tailbacks, are guys who end up being tailbacks. They don't necessarily want to do that, but you were pretty cool with that, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I just love football, and I just really wanted to be on the field, and so getting the opportunity to start, and because the plan when I signed with Texas was to play fullback for 1 year, and then move to tailback, because there was a guy by the name of Priest Holmes. At Texas, but Priest tore his ACL in the spring game, and so he took a medical red shirt and then played my sophomore year. So it postponed my moving to tailback, but I got to do all the single back stuff, and so I got a lot of opportunities to learn football, and I got a lot of opportunities to touch the ball. Austin,
Texas, of course, is a really hot city right now, but in the 90s it was maybe just kind of becoming that. What was it? Did that draw you as well to UT as just the allure of Austin and kind of the scene that was there?
The allure wasn't there yet. I like to think kind of came after me. But here's the thing, right? When there's something, I call it a hidden gem. It's hidden until someone brings light to it. And I think of, my senior year and all of the energy around Austin. It brought a lot of people to Austin for the first time in a long time. It's such an easy place to fall in love with. And so, I consider myself sometimes a visionary. I see things kind of before they happen. And so I think I felt it. I was on to Austin, coming from San Diego, I thought when I flew into Austin, I would see tumbleweed rolling down the tarmac. It's Texas, from the TV shows. And, we fly in and we fly over the lakes and the trees and the hill country, and it was December 17th. I got off the plane. It was 72 degrees. All right. And I just fell in love with it. The countryside, again, the river, the lakes, the people. So yeah, it's a really special place. It's been changing, but it's still special. Still got a charm to it.
Yeah. You finished 5th in the Heisman vote as a junior, and then going into your senior year, you came back. Was winning the Heisman a major goal for you going into that year?
Hell yeah, it was. So I had 4 goals, and I thought if I checked the box on the first 3 goals, the 4th goal will take care of itself. Okay. First one was to become the all-time leading rusher in college football history. The second was to become the all-time leading scorer in college football history. And the third was to become all-time leader in all-purpose yards in college football history. And I figured if I can check all those 3 boxes, it's going to be hard not to give me the Heisman.
Yeah.
I took it hard that I finished 5th. I took it hard that I finished 5th and I wasn't invited to the ceremony my junior year.
Yeah, that was probably an oversight. I think you were just behind Randy Moss, another good player.
Yeah.
I like the attitude though. You talk to a lot of Heisman winners, and they're like, "Well, I didn't really think about it, or I didn't really, worry about the Heisman." But I like that you come out and said, "Yeah, I wanted to win it," and I think that's refreshing.
That's why I came back. When I was a baseball player, remember, and so my dream was not to play in the NFL. My dream was to have the best college football experience I could possibly have. And so when I saw, after my junior year, I led the nation in rushing and scoring, and I obviously had an opportunity to go to the NFL, and I was strongly considering it until one day I was sitting in John Bianco, our sports information director's office, and I was flipping through a college football sports almanac, and I was just curious. So I flipped through to most rushing yards, and of course at the time Tony Dorsett was number 1, and I noticed that I was like 3. And I did the math, and I said, if I do just a little better than I did this past season, which is plausible, I could be the all-time leading rusher in college football history. It was just like, whoa, just that it was in reach, Yeah. And then I flipped a couple of pages, and I saw the touchdown leader, and I was like, oh, wow. If I have the same amount of touchdowns I had last year, I'll have the most ever. Then I flipped over to all-purpose yards, and it was the same thing. And so just the fact that I was so close to making history, I just couldn't turn down the opportunity to go for it.
That's really cool. You actually had a sense of the history surrounding you and the place that you had, in the record books. That's again, not something that's very, very common, I think, among players.
Yeah. It's Texas. So we used to have our study hall was in this, it was called the Tea Room. And it was a Letterman room. And they had hundreds of black and white color pictures of all of the All-Americans and all the sports from Texas. And just sitting in that room every day and being surrounded by it, I couldn't help but see, at least I got to have my picture on this wall one day.
Yeah. You had 3 years with John Malkovich, and then there was a coaching change, and sometimes that can be hard or refreshing or energizing. What kind of impact did the arrival of Mack Brown have on that senior season for you?
I kind of went through the spectrum of all of those,
Yeah.
At first it was disappointing, so before my last game, my junior year, and again, I was leading the nation in scoring. I came out and I said, if Coach Mack, because we were 4-7, I said, if Coach Malkovich gets fired, I'm going to the NFL. And I came out and said it. I was trying to save my coach's job. Yeah. But it didn't help. They didn't care. So he was fired. He was fired right after the game. And I was heartbroken. Like, I truly appreciated and loved that man. He just was not just a football coach, but he really cared about us growing and becoming men. And he taught me so much about the game. So and I'm a loyal person. So it was really tough. And I remember the first day that Coach Brown came in to talk to the team. And I was sitting there with my arms crossed, I'm out of here. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And after, he's a politician. He said all the right things. So I was even more mad. Who is this guy? And so I was pretty much decided that I was going to the NFL. And he called me into his office one day. He said, listen, he says, I know you're probably going to the NFL, but you've been around this program longer than anyone. You probably know the most, help me. And so we spent maybe 90 minutes in me kind of opening up and telling him everything I thought was wrong with the team, what I thought we needed, how we could be better. And the next day, I started seeing him implementing some of my suggestions. The next day, and that was a key moment. I really felt for the first time in my career empowered as a leader, and not just a leader on the field because I was good, but that someone appreciated my ideas. And then the following week, I went to dinner with him and his wife, Sally, and just watching the way they were with each other, it was kind of inspiring, Yeah. And I think those two things and the opportunity to break those records, I came back.
Yeah. Well, you had an amazing year in 1998. You had, including this incredible stretch, 318 yards and 6 touchdowns on 30 carries against Rice. And then you follow that up with a whopping 350 yards and 5 touchdowns against Iowa State, 668 yards and 11 touchdowns in 2 games. That has never been done in Heisman history. You know, of course, being a student of history, that's, you know, you're just making all these historic marks left and right. On the season, 2,124 yards, 27 touchdowns. Looking back and given the way football has changed, are you amazed that you were able to put up that kind of production?
I wasn't at the time because I had put up, I think my junior year, I think I had 4 back-to-back. I had 4 consecutive 200-yard games.
Yeah.
Took a break and had another one. So I was used to having really big games.
Yeah.
And the way Coach Brown was, he really depended on me, and he really put me in a position and gave me every opportunity to shine. Yeah. And so I think the combination of my confidence, my physical shape, and Coach Brown's dedication to getting me the Heisman Trophy, and also reputation. I was watching the film of that Rice game a couple of weeks ago, and those guys were scared. You could see they got a big running back coming downhill, running a 4.4. That's scary for a lot of people. And they would just give me the ball and give me a running start, and guys would just get out of the way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to say about that team and about that season, and this is, I think, why I love football so much, because it really is the ultimate team game. There's a play that they replay every November 26th when I broke the record. Yeah. And they show the 60-yard run where I broke the record. And if you slow it down and you watch, all 11 guys on that one play all did their job. Mm-hmm. The play side receiver came down and cracked the safety. Even the backside receiver chased his man all the way down the field and pushed him out of bounds so that I could get into the end zone. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where I was the star, but everyone on the team had to buy in and play their supporting role.
Yeah.
That's what's rare. Rare is you don't typically see that anymore.
Yeah. You were the most recent Heisman winner to rush for 2,000 yards, and now it's a rare feat in this day and age, even though they play more games than they did back then. And the game has changed a lot since then. What do you think about the diminishing role of running backs in football?
In a way, I think it's a good thing. I think one of the reasons that this conversation is going around a lot in the NFL, and one of the reasons is because running backs get hurt a lot. Yeah. And so the word diminished doesn't sound good, but a running back is always going to be a key part of the game plan. You're always going to have short yardage. You're always going to have time where you need to eat times in the game. You need to eat up the clock. And it's football. You always want times where you want to go hit someone in the mouth. In order to do that, you need a running game. So I think the running back playing a more specialized role and evolving to be more of a all-around player that can do things in the passing game, I think is good for football. I think it's good for the longevity of running backs. So I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. Looking back, what was the most memorable moment in that 1998 season for you?
It was the Nebraska game. I think similar to Texas this year beating Alabama. Right. When as a team we were trying to break through to being an elite team. Yeah. But in order to be an elite team, you have to beat an elite team. Yeah. And in the mid to late 90s, Nebraska was probably the most elite team in college football. Yeah. And to go up to Lincoln and beat them and break a 30-game home winning streak, we proved to ourselves that we were for real.
Yeah. Was there a point in the season where you kind of sat back and said, I think I'm going to win it. I think I'm going to win the Heisman. Or I'm on my way.
Obviously. After the back-to-back 300-yard games, because those came off of, I had a decent game against UCLA, but we got our butts kicked, and then we got destroyed by K-State, and I didn't have a very good game. So that was a low point, but I responded with back-to-back 300-yard games, and then after that, I felt like, okay, we got this.
And then, by the time it was announced that you were going to be a finalist, at this point, it's going to be a coronation because, you're far and away ahead of everyone else. So some of the pressure's off in that regard. And what was your trip to New York City like? And what were some of your favorite memories from that trip?
Michael Bishop and Cade McNown. Those are my favorite memories of that trip. And we're still friends to this day. Every time I see either of them, it's big smiles. And we only hung out for a night. So it was a really magical time for me, and hanging out with those two guys specifically was, made it special.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your interest in yoga and massage and holistic medicine and how you got into that?
Yeah, it started quite organically as being a running back and carrying the ball, 400 times a year. I had to be very creative and active in trying to find ways to recover. And so I tried anything and everything. And the things that worked best for me were craniosacral therapy and acupuncture. And so when I had some free time, I just was curious about why are these weird alternative therapies so effective in helping me deal with all of this like brutality. And if I can learn this and figure out how it helps, I'll be in a position where I can help a lot of other people going through similar situation. And so I started talking to people and studying, and even went back to school to learn more. Because, I tell football players, I say, one of the things that we don't hear people talk about is in order to be a warrior or to be a great football player, you have to learn to recover. Because if you're not healthy enough to get on the field, at your best, you're not going to be able to perform at a high level consistently.
Yeah. What keeps you occupied the most these days? What gives you your passion and your interest and kind of like how in high school you had to do all these sports to keep moving? Like what keeps you moving now? What are the things that you're into?
Entrepreneurship, because in the startup world, you have to do so many different things and you don't ever know what's coming next. And so there's one part is like the business entrepreneurship of having an idea, putting a team together. How do we execute the idea? Like that's all fun, like football team stuff. But more specifically, the startup it's called Leela, and it's an astrology app. So it's taking something that I've been studying for almost 20 years, and all the things I learned about team dynamics and being able to put them together to put something out in the world that helps people. Yeah. So it takes all of the things that I'm interested in and it puts them all together.
How do you spell Leela? Is it Lila?
Yep, you got it.
All right. And so if we wanted to, is that app out now or is that in development?
It's out. Yeah. We just launched the paywall about a month ago. So yeah, it's on the Apple store. It's my baby. I've spent the last 5 years putting everything into it, and it's finally out, and people are enjoying it and using it. And
nice.
It's astrology, and people are like, oh, "That's weird," but to me, I call the app timely food for thought.
That's nice.
Timely food for thought. It's just, sometimes, like an example, okay? Like my wife is the kind of person where if she's really focused on doing something, leave her alone. Okay. And so, right. And if she's going through a time where she's really focused, I'll read Leela and it'll say, leave her alone. And it's just in the back of my mind. So, and if I'm excited about something and I want to share with her and I run downstairs and she doesn't even look up, I don't get offended. I just go back upstairs and say, I'll just talk to her about it later.
Right. Well, for everyone listening, if you are interested in, Ricky Williams' app, Leela, you can find it on the App Store and all the other places you can get your apps. I wanted to ask you a few more questions. I asked the same questions of all the Heisman winners on the podcast, just a kind of a series of questions, which we'll bunch together at the end of the year. What's your favorite Heisman moment by someone else?
Charles Woodson returning the punt against Ohio State. Because again, I was my junior year and I was hoping that I would get invited. And there was strong chance that we could be the first defensive player, and the timing, right? The timing of having such a big game. Oh,
yeah.
I think those are right. Those are the Heisman moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Number 2, where do you keep your Heisman Trophy?
Keep it in a trophy room.
Seems obvious enough.
Got a bunch of trophies.
What Heisman winner were you most excited to meet when you went out to New York?
The one I was most the Heisman Trophy winner I was most excited to meet. I met actually my junior year because he came to Texas. It was Bo Jackson. And the Heisman winner I was most excited to see at the ceremony was Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen's from San Diego, went to the same high school as my mom.
Right.
And so that was a special moment for me.
Describe to me your Heisman moment, signature play, and what happened on that play. Like what you think is like the one play that represents you, Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah. So, I'm going to geek out a little bit. So the thing with Coach Makovic, that his favorite play to run was a counter. We call it gap scheme. Everyone blocks down, you pull two people, and then the running back has a bunch of different lanes.
Yeah.
And that's probably my favorite play to run throughout my first 3 years. And then when Coach Brown came in, we ran a little bit of counter, but mainly we were a lead team.
Mm-hmm.
Just downhill lead.
Yeah.
And I had so many big runs on a lead, and I hit the hole really fast. My fullback got a good block, and I would just accelerated so fast through the hole, like no one could catch me. And I would just like 60-yard, 50, 70-yard runs, a bunch of them my junior and senior year. And so I got really good at running the lead play, running straight downhill at people. And so the first quarter of the Texas A&M game is Coach Brown just kept giving me the ball. And they had on the big Jumbotron like how many yards I needed. So going into the game, I needed 72 yards to break the record.
Yeah.
And I remember looking up and seeing that I had 11 yards to go. And there was this moment, one of those like numbers moments where my senior year, I changed from 11 to 34. So I'm standing there in number 34. I'm looking up and I see 11. And I had this sense that I'm going to do it on this play. And it was just a sense, And like I said, I got the ball and everything just worked out. All 11 guys or all other 10 guys, they all did their job. And I remember the corner came up because it's textbook, right? The coach says to the receiver, okay, safeties are better tacklers than corners. So go block the safety, leave the corner for the running back. Okay. Call me, our receiver goes down, cracks the safety. The corner comes up, I get down and he bounces off and there's no one there. And I'm just in the open field.
Yeah.
And I see one of the fastest guys in college football was the opposite corner for the Aggies, and he had an angle on me. And so I'm thinking, I got to score. I can't go down on the one, you know? And my best friend on the team, Wayne McGarrity, was right behind him, blocked him, pushed him out of bounds, and I just barely fell into the end zone. So it was one because it was downhill and it was a lead play. I had to break a tackle. I had to show my speed. But more importantly, it shows that it's a team game. The receivers, everyone had to do their job.
It took 11 to spring the guy who used to wear 11.
Exactly.
Who's the greatest?
With 11 yards left.
Right, with 11 yards left. Who's the greatest Heisman? Was that the 11th game too, maybe? Maybe it might have been.
It was, I think.
Who's the greatest Heisman Trophy winner of them all?
The greatest, Barry Sanders.
We get that a lot. That's everyone's favorite, I think.
Yeah.
Who do you think should have won the Heisman that didn't? Now, with no disrespect to anybody who did, not taking anything away from anybody who did, but who do you think, if you can give an extra Heisman out to someone, who do you think should have won it?
Vince Young.
Okay.
But again, the national. If they voted after the national championship game, Vince would have won. Because there was so much hype around SC. But if you just going back and watching Vince's junior season, goodness gracious, it was impressive. It
was. Who's the toughest player you ever played against, and why?
Toughest player. So there was a safety that played for the Sooners. And that's part of the why, because those are big games. And those guys are they recruit really big, fast guys. His name was Ghana Joseph. And I think of my sophomore and my junior year, we had battles. There's one play in my sophomore year where I was coming through the hole full speed, and he was coming full speed, and it was like a stalemate. We kind of both hit and bounced off each other. Just safeties, these kind of the safeties that come downhill and want to hit somebody. Those are always the ones you got to watch out for. But I will say, I got one more. He didn't have a great game against us, but as far as being all over the field in an impressive, he missed a bunch of tackles, but he was there every play. It was Zach Thomas. I was very fortunate. Zach just went to the Hall of Fame, NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame this year. And I got a chance as a freshman fullback to block and run against Zach Thomas, man.
What's it like going up the A gap as a lead blocker going up against Zach Thomas?
It was tough because I was a freshman. He was a senior, and just I played more. So he was just like, he was wily, the way he would dodge blocks and anticipate plays. It was a lesson, it was a lesson.
Yeah. I was talking to Archie Griffin earlier in the year, and I asked him where was the strangest place that he's ever been recognized as a Heisman Trophy winner. And he was at some play in England, and someone recognized him there at a play, and he was, shocked. And Danny Werfel told me that he was once hiking in the Rockies, and someone recognized him there. And so my question for you is, what's the strangest place at which you've ever been recognized as a Heisman winner?
Like I was visiting a cathedral in Barcelona, and we were in we're going up like a winding like staircase, and there's an older couple next to me, and the guy kept looking at me, and he said, "Did you win the Heisman Trophy?" And I was like, "Whoa, in a cathedral in Barcelona?" I was like, "Yeah." That's
a good one. That is a good one. Okay, what would you be doing if you never played college football?
I'd have been a coder. I'd have been a software engineer.
Is that something you do on the side? Do you do it for fun, or have you tried to learn how to do that?
Well, yeah. So I was always into computers, even back in the late 90s. Few people had computers, but I was always into computers. I didn't take any computer science classes, but when I got into the NFL and I had a little bit of money, I always had new computers. I was always learning computers. And finally, when I decided to create Leela, I realized that the developers don't know any astrology and I don't know any coding. So something's got to give if we want to get this done. And so I said, I'll try to pick it up and see if it's fun or if I can do it. And I fell in love with it. And so it's how I spend all my free time, because my whole life I've always wanted to be a creator. You can say I can create plays, I can create space in football, but I mean like a creator, not just entertaining people, but creating something that people can use. And learning to code has given me the ability to take ideas and turn it into something useful and practical for people.
Thank you, Ricky Williams, for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep having a good time on the planet, and we hope to see you soon. Okay, now that we're in October, we thought it would be good to touch some grass and get a little grounding and perspective from one of college football's preeminent writers and analysts, Stu Mandel of The Athletic. The Athletic publishes a Heisman poll every week, and this week it has Caleb Williams of USC number 1, Michael Penix Jr. of Washington number 2, Bo Nix of Oregon number 3, Brock Bowers of Georgia 4th, and Cam Ward of Washington State 5th. Stu, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Athletics Heisman poll compiled by Manny Navarro? Do you guys actually poll actual Heisman voters?
Well, we polled the entire staff, and many of them are actual Heisman voters. We have quite a few of those. I don't think everybody, it's 34 voters. I don't know that all of them are official Heisman voters, but certainly people who cover college football nationally, as their primary role.
4 of the top 5 vote getters in this latest poll are Pac-12 quarterbacks, with the league being in the last year. Could this end up maybe being one of the big developing storylines in college football, that the league is just going out in a blaze of glory in this area?
Yeah, I think it already is. They've got 3 teams in the top 10. I think there might have been a perception coming into the season that USC was, the class of the conference. Now I think people are looking at Washington and they're looking at Oregon and maybe even Washington State as being in that tier. And then we knew going into the year that there were going to be, these great quarterbacks. I think the Colorado story and Shedeur Sanders' emergence just made it that much more pronounced. That it's just really rare for this, as you know, this many guys of this caliber in one conference. The Pac-12 has certainly been known, going back to when it was the Pac-10, as a conference that produces a lot of star quarterbacks, but to have this many at once is pretty rare.
It's interesting that they're all transfers, not homegrown guys at all. Brock Bowers is kind of lurking around at number 4 on this list. What do you think a guy like Bowers has to do to get to New York?
That's a great question. I mean, I think he's been the most unique player in college football for 2 years now. And if somebody wants to make the case he's the best player in college football, I think that's a perfectly valid case. But it's just become so hard for somebody that's not a quarterback to win this award. The quarterbacks just put up such, amazing statistics by the end of the year. And even somebody like Bowers is going to have he had a huge game against Auburn the other day. He's going to have games where he has, 4 catches for 40 yards, whereas these quarterbacks seem to do it week in and week out. I think the thing he has going for him is, first of all, name recognition. The fact that Georgia likely will be in the playoff race right till the end, and no more Stetson Bennett. So as you know, you're the Heisman expert. It's hard to separate sometimes the quarterback from the guys who catch the passes. I think one reason Devontae Smith broke through a few years ago, first of all, just an absurd season, but nobody at the time thought Mac Jones was going to end up being a first-round quarterback. He was, I thought, kind of devalued by college fans that year. Whereas if it had been Tua or Bryce Young as the quarterback, it would have been harder, I think, for him to win the award.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, it's interesting with Bowers. A tight end, it's almost like it's a little bit of a conundrum because, like, the better he does, the more defenses do to try to stop him, and it's a little bit easier to stop a tight end than it is the quarterback, because quarterbacks have a little bit more control over where the ball is going.
True, but nobody's really. I mean, if you look back to, first of all, the last 2 games he's had over 100 yards. And what's always amazed me about, they've been in the national championship game the last 2 years. He was the undisputed star of the TCU game, right? 7 catches for 152 yards. And then the year before, he had a huge game in the SEC championship, though they lost that one to Alabama. So he's had some of his best performances in the biggest games. Probably what hurts him a little bit this year is the SEC is not as strong. And so you're watching him do it against South Carolina or Auburn. They'll play Kentucky this week. Kentucky's ranked, but they're not going to play Alabama during the regular season. Just not as many showcase opportunities as in the past.
Yeah, all great points. Now that we've hit October, there's just a swarm of big games coming up. You got Oklahoma, Texas this weekend, Oregon, UW, and USC, Notre Dame the following weekend, FSU, Duke, Washington State, Oregon. Could October end up being the proving ground for this year's race? Like, whoever gets out unscathed has the advantage?
I mean, I think it'll probably thin the herd a little bit. I mean, when that Washington Oregon game is going to be huge, and you got 2 of the top 3 guys going head to head. So whoever wins is probably going to separate a little bit from the other guy, maybe not necessarily eliminate the other guy. The trend I've seen over the last, 7-8 years since we went to the 14 playoff is that it ultimately comes down to the guys on the teams that either make the playoff or are in the mix right till the end. So, if Oregon beats Washington, but then ends up going 9-3, Bo Nix is not going to win the Heisman. It's which of these guys and which of their teams continue to climb up until the end of the season. Yeah.
Who's a player that not many people are talking about who you think could make a late break for the Heisman?
Well, I think in the biggest game this week, the OU-Texas game, Dylan Gabriel has a shot to Dylan Gabriel's been fantastic so far. He just hasn't Oklahoma hasn't had a big game. So they're going to go against Texas this week, where Quinn Ewers is considered the Heisman candidate among those 2 teams. And if he outplays him and Oklahoma pulls the upset, you're going to see him, I would assume, in this poll next week, jump from he has 1 point total to top 3, top 4 on the list. Big opportunity for him.
You're a Heisman voter. What do you personally look at in a Heisman candidate when the season's going on, and then as the season comes to its end? Does your criteria sort of evolve as the season goes along, depending on the context of the season, or do you have a set criteria that you apply every year?
I think I'd be lying to say that I put as much thought into it week to week as I do on the one that matters. Right? It's kind of like the playoff. The only playoff ranking that matters is the last one. I'd rather have the whole body of work. So I think, just speaking for myself, the in-season ones are more about who's hot at that moment. And we're still early in the season, so even Caleb Williams has been phenomenal, but he already would have been number one on my preseason ballot if we had one. The later we get into the season, I think it's the guys who produce in the biggest games. You're not necessarily tracking what Jordan Travis does every single week, but we all saw what he did against LSU, what he did against Clemson. So that's kind of what happens during the season. And at the end of the season, I wish that the ballot wasn't due Monday at noon. I wish you had a whole week to really dig in. But at that point, I'm looking at stats and I'm looking at, basically who had the most complete season from start to finish. Nobody plays amazing 12 straight weeks, right? But, you have some guys who were just phenomenal in the biggest games of the year. On the other side, you might have guys who had a couple, had great stats overall, but had a couple duds. So it's usually looking for the guys who were the most consistently outstanding throughout the season.
Finally, we've been kind of through this rodeo before with the returning Heisman winner trying to match what Archie Griffin did. As you know, I've long been highly skeptical that it could ever happen again. But with all the changes in college football, so much chaos going on, so many foundations being jarred loose, doesn't it feel a little different this time? Like maybe this could be the best shot given what Caleb Williams brings to the table. And also, if Caleb doesn't win, can we really, really start to wonder if the possibility of a repeat Heisman is just too difficult for anyone to pull off again?
So I have an interesting theory on this, and I'll see if you give it any credence. It feels subjectively like he's more on the path to repeating than any guy in recent memory. Like he's still pretty universally looked at as the best player and the biggest star. And I think NIL may have something to do with that. Caleb Williams is in commercials on your TV every week, right? Yeah. Michael Penix is not. Brock Bowers is not. Like it kind of reinforces the notion that he's the best player in the sport, right? He's the biggest star in the sport. Mm-hmm. That won't override if USC's defense, which may be Caleb Williams' biggest obstacle, cost them several games. I don't think he can overcome that. But if it is like a tight race and it's him at the end of the year and some other quarterbacks, like I just feel he's kind of entrenched. He's established himself as the best player in college football. And there's just kind of weekly reminders of that.
Yeah. And I mean, in a weird way too, because there's so many different ways it can go. Sometimes the fact that his defense isn't doing very well, it helps him a bit, right? Keeps him in games longer, keeps him going for touchdowns, and the pace he's on. My question is, if you're trying to pick a Heisman winner, and if USC is 10-2, and Caleb Williams has 55 combined touchdowns, how do you weigh that against a Heisman candidate on a team that's 12-0 and had a very good year, but maybe not a year for the ages?
That's a great question. I mean, what's amazing about Caleb is that right now he had a phenomenal season last year, and he's producing at an even higher level this year. I mean, my gosh, 21 TDs and 1 INT through 5 games. That's insane. I think that, I think we'll just have to see. I mean, the last guy that I remember kind of fitting the scenario you said was Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow won 2 national championships, but people forget the year he won the Heisman, Florida went 9-4. But it was like this season for the ages. I don't remember the exact number, but it was kind of like what you were saying, some absurd number of total touchdowns.
He had 29 passing touchdowns, 22 rushing touchdowns, 51 total touchdowns at the time, a Heisman record. And, the next year he got the most Heisman first place votes, but his year was clearly not as good because Florida's team was better and he didn't need to be as good and wasn't relied upon. So, but
USC, and that's the thing. You have to, it's just, the nature of it is if you're going to repeat as Heisman, you have to do even better than the year before. And that's what Caleb is doing so far. Obviously, his toughest games are still ahead of him. The Notre Dame game, everybody's going to be watching that game. And it's not like if he has let's say he throws 3 touchdowns and 1 pick, right? That doesn't mean everybody's going to be just, he stinks now. I don't think that's the case at all. But, people nitpick and people love the new shiny thing. And Shador up until the Oregon game was that, I think. I'm sure there will be another one here soon to come. But the thing that usually hurts guys if their team stumbles a couple times is that they just go out of sight, out of mind because we're focused on the teams that actually have a shot at the playoff. I don't think that will be as much the case just because USC is such a high profile team and a brand and whether they're winning or not, like they play USC and Washington back-to-back weeks in November. Everybody, unless one of those teams collapses between now and then, those are going to be big games.
And they're all going to get more than one bite at the apple, right? So, Oregon's going to get Washington and USC. So if Oregon drops a close one to Washington, he can come back and rebound against USC. And same with Penix. He can come back against USC and so I guess it's interesting because Williams, I've always thought that, like we talked about, there's like this heavy burden on this repeat winner for most of the season. But I have the sense that as the further the season goes along and the further he is competitive, then maybe it starts to get into this grudging respect in the sense that going through this pressure to do it again suddenly becomes in itself its own attribute, right?
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about everybody knows their defense is bad. And so when they win a game the way they did last week, it only reinforces how important Caleb Williams is to USC. Like they go as he goes. And so, it kind of works to his benefit. I look back at Bryce Young last year and one could have made a similar case. He didn't have as many great players around him. So what he was doing was even more impressive. But once they lost, I feel like once they lost the second game to LSU, he was done. And it's not like Bryce Young suddenly was a not great player. He still was, but there's just there's so many other options. And that's definitely going to be true this year. I mean, I noticed just now that Drake May is not on our list at all. And he's but has enough of a reputation that if they beat Florida State, for instance, he's going to jump back up that list, right? Like there's just so many great quarterbacks around the country this year.
I know I was going to end it on that note, but I thought of one more thing, and that is the guy who's actually the main guest in our show this week, which is Cam Ward of Washington State. The factor of Washington State and Oregon State sort of being left behind and maybe the general, there's this little, there was the whole thing with Pat McAfee and a little bit of disrespect with Washington State recently. And how much of a sentimental favorite could he potentially become if Washington State makes a run at the conference title and he puts up numbers that are in the same time zone as some of these more well-known guys?
It's a good point. I mean, I feel like if Washington State, if the Pac-12 wasn't going away and Washington State went 10-2 this year, that would be a pretty big college football story. Like they would be one of the better stories of the season. If they do it under these circumstances, it's a huge story, and which would bring that much more attention to Cam Ward.
Yeah, All right, these are all great things to look out for in the coming weeks. Stu Mandel of The Athletic, great publication. I recommend everyone go out there, get a subscription. We appreciate you coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast, and we'll see you out there on the road maybe some point.
All right, thanks, Chris.
The official Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, co-produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. Paul Goldberg is the executive producer and editor. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to the Heisman Trophy Trust and its executive director Rob Whalen and associate director Tim Henning. The official Heisman Trophy podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find clips of our show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just go to @Heisman Trophy.